Miami is a melting pot of people coming here from all over the world, but especially New Yorkers. And I know, being in New York and colleagues in New York, that doing business there is so different than doing real estate business in Miami. So today I have an expert, Russell Jacobs. He is my longtime colleague and friend, an amazing real estate attorney, also has so much experience in New York as he's part of an office there as well. And so we're just going to talk about the differences. I find myself that so many clients come from New York, and education is the most important thing because it is so different. So Russ, thank you for taking the time.
You're so welcome, Melissa. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
And when I talk to my colleagues, I feel like it's the Wild West. They want a property, they send it to another agent, they sort of agree. There's no contracts until later on. We're here, we write our own contracts. Can you explain a little bit about the whole contract process?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences between New York and Florida that people who are coming from New York and buying property down here would need to know and understand. And one of the big ones is how the contract gets done. So that was great. In New York, every contract is written from scratch by an attorney on their own custom form and then negotiated with another attorney in their form. And that's taking, weeks on end. Here in Florida, we have a standard form that the Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar developed over time called the as-is contract, if you're asking for it. But they're going to have you as a realtor, so they don't ever need to worry because you're totally on top of that. And that contract is used 99.999% of the time in pretty much every residential deal there is. And it has a standard for how everything gets done. It itself is missing things, so it's always important to have an attorney fix some of the things that are missing, but it really changes the way things get done, because in New York it could take a week or two and the contract's going back and forth, whereas in Florida things move very, very, very fast. It's, you're reviewing a contract within a few hours or a day, it's signed and turned around.
In fact, that's the most important thing. When we do our contracts, we anticipate that our attorney is going to respond immediately, and we're going to get that contract in and expect an answer within 24 or 48 hours. It's not a long process. We don't want to give our counterparts the time to be bidding us against other contracts. So that is a huge difference. And of course, as you said, we always will have an attorney review our contracts to make sure that they add additional language to protect our clients. One of the things that my friends in New York always talk about is that they pay for inspections before they even have a contract, which to me, I don't understand, because why am I spending $1,000 on inspections if I don't even know that my buyer is going to have that property? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a very different thing altogether. Again, in New York, they do an inspection before they have the contract signed. Sometimes the seller will pay for it, sometimes the buyer pays for it. And then meantime, the seller may be running around getting other buyers and other people who are negotiating and so on, and the buyer really doesn't have any recourse there too much. Whereas down in Florida, we do it the other way, which I actually think makes more sense, which is we sign a contract assuming, hey, I'm taking it as is, I looked at the property, I had a nice showing with my amazing realtor, right? So I saw what the property looks like, I'm giving you a price based on what you designate as the right thing, and now I'm gonna lock down the seller. I've got them locked into a contract, seller is wound tight and bound, and now the buyer has a period where they can say, I like it, I don't like it, and they can get out for any reason or no reason at all and get out and get their deposit back.
And that's a big difference, because everything that we do is as is with a right to inspect.
Right.
We have the right to inspect, we have the right to ask for a credit, the seller has a right to say no or to offer partial credit, and we as representing buyers have the right to terminate.
Exactly, and so it gives all the power to the buyer in the transaction in Florida to be able to decide whether they want it, don't want it, want to renegotiate. There may be a price change, there may be other concessions that you can negotiate with the comfort of knowing if you don't get that done, you can still move forward with the deal if you want or not.
Or not, and that's what I really like, that our buyers really have a little bit more control over the whole process. The other thing is the timing that I find amazing. Like here, we can close very quickly. With a cash transaction, we can close in a week or two, just pending an approval from an association if it's a condominium. Or with financing, maybe 60 days. But in New York, the process is much longer. And can you explain time is of the essence? Because here, time is of the essence. In New York, it seems to be, well, I'm thinking about it. Let's discuss.
I don't understand how people do deals in New York with this provision. And the idea of a time is of the essence is exactly what it sounds like. It just means you have to say in a contract that time is important to you. If time isn't important to you, then it's an on or around. So they'll have a closing date and the buyer can kick off or push off the closing date another month, another 2 months, and you don't know when you're closing based on, whatever happens. To me, that's crazy. I don't even know how you do that. Every Florida contract, almost bar none, is time is of the essence, which means your closing date is your closing date. It's either going to happen before that or on it, but it is not going to happen after that.
And oftentimes here, there might be a seller that needs the funds in order to purchase their other property. So, and their closing date is pending the closing date of their existing property. So if there wasn't time of the essence, I don't know how our buyers and sellers could move forward properly without having like a breakdown.
And it's the same with the financing contingencies if you have any. If it's cash, you don't have to worry about that. But it's like, the buyer needs certainty too. If a lender thinks time's not of the essence, then they're not in a rush to get anything done. In Florida, because they know they have a very hard deadline on their financing and there's a very hard deadline for the closing, everybody is driving the deal forward where they need it forward, and no one's sitting around, looking up at the stars. They're focused on their deal and getting their deal done, which is, what you want. If you're interested in doing it, you should do it.
Everything that we've been talking about up until this point has been with existing construction and resales, but we have a lot of beautiful new condominiums in Miami too, and the process is a little bit different there. And I want to just maybe talk a little bit about that and the rescission period, allowing people to make better decisions if they love something. We always want our buyers to be in control, especially in new construction. So maybe just share a little bit about the rescission period and the process of buying new construction.
Yeah, it's a very different process. There, the developer usually provides the attorney prepared agreement. It's usually about 40 or 50 pages long. There's a 15-day automatic window that's provided by the Florida law, which says when you buy into a new condominium, you get 15 business days to review it and look at all the documents and check your floor plans and look at the area and check the property and see what it looks like and make sure you've gone through all the documents and everything else that you need to do. And you can get out for any reason or no reason during that 15-day period. And then once the 15-day period is over and you're comfortable, then you move forward. And then there's a staggering set of deposits that are due at different times.
It's really important because in a developer contract, you don't necessarily have to have an attorney reviewing the contract. However, I always suggest it because there's going to be language in there that may be not as favorable to the buyer as we would want. And therefore, it's really important that an attorney review it. And during that 15-day rescission period, they can write an addendum with terms that are more favorable for the buyer, such as asking them for an additional parking spot, asking them to extend the deposits for a longer period of time. Everything we want is to make it more favorable for the buyer, and having an attorney is really important for that.
It really is. The developer contracts are made for the developer, and they don't often get people negotiating them. But the major law firms that do this know that they're willing to do certain things, so you just get the right person in there, and you can get a lot of extra things that nobody else gets if you know what you're doing and you have the right agent to do it.
One of the things we find often especially with working with our sellers, is sometimes they like to do work and they don't always have it permitted. And although we always suggest it, sometimes it's just too time consuming or maybe too complicated in their eyes. And then they go to sell the property. And then we find that there's no record of permits, or work was done without permits, or there are open permits that haven't been closed. As an attorney, when you're representing both buyer and seller, how do we handle it if a buyer still wants the property? What are the risks? What's the process for you?
It's such a great question, and a lot of it depends on what happened before the contract got signed. So, for example, in Florida, the standard as-is contract does not require the seller to do anything to close permits. But here, you don't have to close a permit to close a deal. So you can have a house that's out there for 20 years with open permits on it, and that's fine, obviously, until the city or the county has a problem, and then they're going to come in and make you close them. It's really key in the beginning of a contract to negotiate that provision in as a buyer and make sure that you have language in there that requires the seller to close any open or expired permits, cure code violations. Very, very important provision, not in the standard contract, which people are confused about, one that a buyer would want. Obviously, the seller doesn't want that. And there's another provision in the contract that's really important, and that says that the seller did not do any work without permits unless they disclose it. Now, they have a great realtor like you, of course they're gonna do that. You want to, as a seller, you want to disclose, because it's like an immunity shot, preventing them from ever having to worry about it later on if they told the buyer during their inspection period. But for a buyer, when that doesn't happen, that can create obviously complications later when the seller didn't tell them about work. So we'll sometimes recommend that they take an inspector or a contractor, have them look at the permits that were pulled, and then walk around the property to see what wasn't done without a permit. So there's different ways to handle it depending on the situation, depending on what work you're doing. If you're demolishing the house or gut renovating it completely, then the permits don't even matter because you're gonna end up closing them out when you do the demo anyway. So it's really situation by situation dependent, which is why you want a phenomenal realtor like you and an attorney to work on that together.
And the permits, open permits, don't cloud the title. So you can get clear title?
That's correct. If you have an open or expired permit, you can still close on a piece of property. You are allowed to do that. In fact, the standard contract allows that to happen. But it's obviously a problem if you ever go to do renovation work, or if the city and the county ever comes knocking on the door and wants something closed or fixed, you're gonna have to deal with it.
Yes, I'm experiencing that right now. Truly special.
Yes, it happens all the time.
But I think the most important thing that we can learn is that even though Florida is not an attorney state, it's so important to have smart, reputable attorneys that have great relationships with other attorneys, that have great relationships in the cities, to make sure that whether they're representing a seller or a buyer, that everybody is protected with their best interests. And that's why I really love working with you as well.
And that's why I love working with you, because you cover that stuff half the time before I even get there. So I appreciate that, Melissa. It's so wonderful to talk with you.
Same, and thank you for all your insight, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.